just look at me.
Okay.
So what tribe are you from?
I'm the First Nation of Crees from northern Quebec.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, from Quebec.
Yes.
What part of Quebec were you born in?
In northern Quebec and West-Wanepi, Quebec. That's the name of my reservation.
Ah.
Yeah.
What residential school did you go to?
I went to the Shingwauk, the Shingwauk school, residential school
Oh,
here
right
in
here?
in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Yes.
That's pretty far to come from Quebec over
Oh,
to here.
oh yeah, yeah. That's about 14-hour drive for us. When we first started coming, we lived on an island. That was way back in the 1950s, and we we were flown in, by pontoon planes, and taken, to the mainland, and that was called Sanitaire in northern Quebec, and then we were bused, the rest of the way. That we used to stay at this residential school. It was a Catholic residential school there in Amos. We stay overnight there, because by the time we all got flown in, it was towards evening. So we would just stay overnight in Amos at the residential school there. It was a Catholic residential school. And then we were bused the next morning. We would take off, to Sault Ste. Marie to come here, and be part of this school, then for the whole year. And we never got to go home, of course, for any holidays. We just stayed here year round until the following when the school year ended, around the end of June. And that's when we would go home, and then we'd go, be gone for July and pretty much July and part of August, and till the end of August, and then we were gone for about 2 months, to go back home, and then we'd come back again, for the school year, at that time around the end of September.
So
I mean,
you
the end of
take
August.
that 14-hour journey back for the summer?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we would get bused back, back to West-Wanepi, and our parents would come and get us and most of our parents, didn't have cars at that time.
Yeah.
And we would get picked up by canoes, and be taken back to the reserve on the island, whenever they came and picked us up, until they moved, they moved the reservation to the mainland afterwards, after this was all happening, after everything was all done, and with our boarding schools, and boarding schools were starting to close then at that time, and so we didn't have to go back there, on the island after that. We were just bused to our community there in West-Wanepi, because it was, moved over to the mainland, like I said. So it just happened that way. And it was much easier for our families then, too. So they didn't have to, canoe, to come and get us, because sometimes it got really windy. And so we couldn't cross the lake to get over to the island. So we'd have to stay, on the mainland for a few days till the water calmed down, and then we'd take off on our canoes then, and then towards evening.
How old were you when you first went?
I was 8 years old at that time, and I was pretty much established in my culture, and my language also then too, and still speak the language, the Cree language, yet at that time, and because I was raised in the bush, with my family, and learned the culture, and I pretty much was set in my ways as a native child at that time, and the Cree language was the only language I spoke then at that time then too. So I didn't speak a word of English, when I first came here, and I knew a few words like hello and goodbye and those kind of words, and that's about it. That was my vocabulary at that time. It was just the hello and goodbyes, and that's about it. And so I really had to learn pretty quick, to learn the language, learn the English language, and I didn't understand what was going on half the time, and because we would be instructed on, on different things that we had to do during the day, and also at school, I had a hard time. It was just, it was almost devastating, for a lot of us that that didn't speak any English at that time to come here, and a lot of us didn't. Like my little brother, he was only 6 years old at that time, and he didn't speak a word of English. Also, he only spoke the language, and so he had a terrible time. He rebelled, a few times, and got some strappings, and and got some beatings, because he really rebelled, because he wanted to go back home. He didn't want to stay, and I encouraged him that he had to stay, because it was just, it's one of those things that we have to do. I kept on telling him, we have to learn this language, because we might have to use it for later on as we get older. We might have to find jobs, and this sort of thing. So I encouraged him that we have to learn to speak this language. And even though he didn't want to, he was very stubborn, and so he got a lot of strappings, of course, over that, and the beatings. And of course, he was one of the ones that was sexually abused also, too, while here at this boarding school. And he really never told any of us, his sisters, but he told my brothers. And I knew that there was something that had happened here at this school when he was here. And because he just didn't have that communication with us sisters, and because he just felt that, he was just so ashamed of himself, of what happened to him, as a little boy. And he didn't thoroughly understand. And so the only people that he was able to, he didn't really tell until he got older. He never told anybody. He never told my brothers until he was, in his 20s. That's when he started telling my brothers that something happened to him. And of course, he went into alcohol. He tried to drown it out, so he didn't have to think about it. And so he was an alcoholic. And just a couple years ago, he has, he's missing. He's still missing. We haven't been able to find him. He was in his trap lines, doing whatever he used to do, and getting prepared for the winter months, setting up his traps. And what he was doing was he was clearing land area, clearing, to make, clearing for, for snowmobiles to go through, so they can go ahead and go through the air, through land and everything when they're riding their snowmobiles rather than going on land sometime, on water. And so he was clearing, roads, for at least for for the snowmobiles to go through. And it was towards fall, a couple of years ago, and one of my brothers, or a couple of my brothers, he had told them that he was going to be, doing this. And so he called them and said, it's right around maybe October. He said, I'm going to be coming back from the woods after clearing. Would you, one of you, come and pick me up, to take me into town, to get some more supplies? And so my brother said yes, and two of my brothers said yes, and that they would go and pick him up. And so they waited at the place where he said he was going to be, and he never arrived. So what the boys did is they went back over to the camp where he thought he might be, and they checked the camp, and they stayed there for the night because it was, it was going into the late evening and stuff. When by the time they got around to maybe thinking, I think maybe we better go look for him, see where he's at. So when they got to the camp, there was no David. So they waited there overnight. The next morning, they took the canoe over to the other side of the lake where the other camp was, where he said he was going to be clearing the area, and they looked for him. And they looked at the area where he was, where he had finished, one trail area, and then they looked over at another area, and they found the canoe where he used the canoe to to go back and forth, and they found all his supplies, food, extra change of clothes, and his guns. He usually would hunt while he was out there, and but one of the things that they didn't find was his chainsaw, his backpack, and his hatchet. Those three items were never found. They looked everywhere. They looked, in the woods. They looked at all the camps. Never found, those three items. So it's a complete mystery of what happened to my brother David. That was part of this school system. He was a boarding school student here also then too. So so it's very sad for the whole family that we have to go through that right now with all the turmoil going with boarding schools, and then we have to go through having him missing and not be able to be found, and so it's really been really hard on the family, especially my brothers, because they always depended on him when it came to hunting season time, moose hunting and goose season, and then of course the trapping, that he did with the boys, and stuff like that, because he was just so well informed in that, in that field as a bushman. He was a tallyman also for our trap line, and too. That was it's called Shingwauk area, and that he was the tallyman. He was ahead of that area, and he took care of that area and made sure that that it was going to be taken care of. And so he was always there, year round type of thing, to take care of that land, our trap line, and so he was responsible.
Did you get to see them, your siblings, when you were at school?
No, not too much. David was the only one that that was here, with me, and of course I had aunts and uncles that went to school here. The Trapper family, Margaret Trapper and Betsy Trapper and Willie Trapper, were here, and I had a lot of cousins, then too, that were part of the Diamond side of the family, and like Billy Diamond and Albert Diamond and Gertie, were my cousins, that went to school here, and I was a Diamond. I was a Diamond at the same time. Yeah, so
Did
those.
you get to interact with them?
I interacted with my cousin Gertie, and also with Billy Diamond, and also Albert then too. I was able to talk with them because they went to this school, and we had little gatherings where we went on picnics, this sort of thing, and went to different shows, that type of thing. And so I was able to interact with them,
So you still kept a family bond?
a little bit of family bond, but we didn't live on the same reservation, of course, because Billy and Albert and Gertie were way up in the Washkagnish, part of their reservation up there, way up in the James Bay area, and mine was down in Waswanipi area. So David and I were the only ones, that were siblings. And of course, I had a lot of cousins, here too. The Trapper side of the family was here, so I had cousins and I had aunties and uncles that went to this school also then too. So I felt a little bit, that I had part of my family here, but then I really created a lot of good family friends, type of thing, while I was here then too. And I didn't get that abuse. Like some of the kids did, but I still felt deprived of the things that we were told, that we couldn't speak the language was one thing, and we were not able to do any celebration of our culture. We never went to powwows. They did not encourage us to be able to go to powwows, to be able to share, with our culture, or start learning our culture on that part. So that's one of the deprivations that we had, was because they didn't want us to speak the language, and also not be able to practice any of our culture, and like going to powwows and visiting, even visiting here locally with the tribes. We were not allowed to go there. We were not allowed to go outside, outside this area, and unless we were, escorted, by our, by the principal or any of our, immediate supervisors that took care of us, in the home here.
When you were 8 when they came to get you, to bring you to this school, did you understand why they were bringing you here?
Not really. They just told us that we had to go away to school because we had to learn the language, because there's going to be some jobs that were going to be available eventually, probably, that we were going to be able to use the language, be able to use the English language, and that we probably won't be able to come home during the holidays because it's long distance. And plus, it cost the government a lot of money for us, to be able to go home during the holidays. They would have to pay our way, and our parents really didn't have the funds, for us to be able to go home, to catch the bus, the Greyhound bus that would go back and forth up there into the James Bay area, and so our parents couldn't afford to be able to come and get us, because they didn't have vehicles, and the buses were too expensive, for us to be able to go home during the school year, like holidays like Christmas and Easter. Those are the main holidays that we celebrated here, and so.
When you left, you were 16 when you left the residential school?
No, I didn't leave until after high school, so I was here a good 12, 13 years. I failed one year, so I was here really a total of 13 years, going to the elementary school, and then to the high school, and finished up, and graduated, with high school here on this reservation. Of course, we were boarded out, after we got done with with elementary school. We had to go outside because there wasn't enough room for all of us to stay here at this school, because they wanted more new students, to be here, the elementary level school students to stay here, and they didn't have enough room for the high school students to stay here. And so they billeted us, into the mainstream homes, where we stayed in Sault Ste. Marie, homes, private homes.
One thing that I'm interested in is just what the residential schools did to First Nations.
I think a lot of us felt that, too, because our parents, didn't have that connection with us after we left. It seemed like it was just like a, cutting an arm off type of thing, and that's the connection that our parents felt. Part of us was gone from them, and we were different when we came back. We spoke that language. And we kept on telling them, we have to keep speaking this English language. We can't speak the Cree language. And that really, I think, discouraged them in a way. And this is probably where a lot of disconnection came in, because a lot of the students never went back home, like myself. I didn't go back home to my hometown. I go visit there. I visit my sisters and there now. But I married outside the family, outside my community, and that's because of the disconnection that I had, with my family. And I did not marry a native. I married non-native, and that's because of the assimilation that was, and I had told my family that, and my mom, when I told her that I would not, probably won't be living in the community eventually, but I'll keep coming home to visit. But it's not the same anymore, I told him. I'm not the same anymore. And I could not explain to her in the language what they had done to me. And I think it was just a hopeless case then, she thought. And so I was very disconnected, with the family then, at that time, and I'm not completely disconnected per se. I still go back, to visit my family, and we have reunions, this sort of thing, but I'm not going to be able to live there, be part of that, that connection I used to have, living in the bush and being, doing the things that I used to do, growing up. And I still speak the language, like I said, still speak the Cree language. Nextana yim yan, that's what I said. I learned, I still speak the language. That's Nextana yim yan, and Gashan Kadej Guy, Kriega Gashan Kadej Gayim Nanuch. And so this is what I'm saying, I still speak that language. And so I still have connections with my brothers and my sisters, but not as close as we used to be, because I live so far away from them. We only go visit maybe once, maybe twice a year. Maybe at Christmas time we'll go home, and then we're going to have a reunion this year. And so I'll, connect with them then, at that time then too. And they've gotten used to that, and they still love me. I still love them, just the same. And but it's not the same like we used to be, and it's not, we're not as close, per se. When we were growing up, we just did a lot of family things together, when we were growing up, and we had, different gatherings with my grandparents, and we would go live with my grandparents every once in a while, just to stay close, close with them. And we did a lot of hunting and trapping, togetherness with my uncles and my aunties, but those are the things that I completely miss out now because I'm not living in that community, and all my brothers and sisters are able to do those kind of things now. I can't do it, because I don't live in that community anymore, and that's the separation of that culture, that I had. But I work for a tribe now in Mount Pleasant. They're the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, and I feel really connected with that tribe. Even though I'm not part of that tribe, because of the culture, and because I saw a lot of resemblance with the culture that I had growing up, and so I have the culture, kind of in my pocket also now, that I'm getting, up in age, and stuff like that. So I'm in my 60s now, and so I just feel lucky, in a way, that I get to work with, with a tribe. They're still my people, and even though they're not, they're not part of, I'm not a member of that tribe, but I still feel connected with them, and they speak the Ojibwe language, and I've learned how to speak that language also then too, and because of the culture, similar culture, that they've celebrated.